Now, with this final portion of the chapter, we're going to focus on where America stood in regards to the war effort, where America stood ideologically with the notion of Nazi Germany believing in racial superiority, the rhetoric that was being used to justify that by Adolf Hitler. But let's start off with how America mobilized. Remember, during World War II, we saw the Selective Service Act, a draft that put us in a position to be successful in sending 3 million Americans in a matter of months in order to help secure the victory for during World War I. When we look at World War II, we see that unemployment fell from 14% to 2% in a matter of 3 years. Many people will take that and suggest that it was World War II that saved us from the Great Depression. I think a fair approach would be that, remember, unemployment was anywhere near 25%, and this was around 1932. Well, if it's now 1940, that's 8 years later, and unemployment is at 14%. Again, it was at 25, now at 14. That's an 11% drop. Then it goes from 14 to 2. That's a 12% drop, but it drops 12% in 3 years. This is what happens when the United States repurposes and refits major factories and industries to support our interest in a conflict. It's easy to see. I mean, this isn't difficult, and the math is not difficult to discern. 12% is greater than 11%. To do it in 3 as opposed to 8 is better. I'm not sure if one or the other were absolutely the reason as to why we got out of the Great Depression. I think they both helped, and I think a broader perspective of the issue would assess that the New Deal helped, and World War II, our ability to mobilize our efforts to assist in World War II helped. By 1944, American factories were producing a ship a day, an airplane every 5 minutes. The wealthiest of Americans were only paying, before the war, only the wealthiest 4 million Americans were paying income taxes. By 1945, over 40 million Americans are paying income tax, and the money, or I should say the revenue generated from that, will support the war effort. Many women were engaged in the conflict. Many women were fighting in the war, and what we need to take away from that is that when all hands are on deck, when every aspect of our society is involved and can play a role in the war effort, those tend to be the type of wars that we win. Now, I want to talk about minorities, particularly so-called hyphenated Americans. This would be Mexican Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and African Americans. But we'll start off with Mexican Americans. Now, they're allowed to serve in the Army because racially, Mexicans or anybody of Hispanic descent, they can identify as white. Now, they'll be treated as if they are people of color, and and so we are people of color. But racially speaking, they can make an argument that they are white, and therefore they are allowed to serve alongside Caucasians during World War II. So yay! Now for Native Americans, they will serve in the conflict, and they will be revered in this conflict because we can utilize their famous Navajo language because people around the world are not familiar with this language. They will code messages, highly sensitive information, and they're able to code it in their language. Nobody really understands that code because the reality is this: their language, their culture, the people have been subjugated to a slow decimation. Their numbers are lessening and lessening, and they're becoming a forgotten society and people and I'm not downplaying Native American culture at all, or people of Native American descent at all. The reality is this: there's a reason why most people don't know their language, or their language is considered secret, and it's because their numbers and their presence is dwindling. But nonetheless, they assist. Native Americans are supportive of the United States in their efforts to win this conflict, just like Mexican Americans were, just like African Americans were, and even Asian Americans were willing to fight. They saw themselves as American. Yes, they were of Asian descent, but if they were going to serve, they had to serve in all Asian units. There was a great deal of anxiety with Asians serving in the military because people fear what they don't understand. And when you see somebody who doesn't look like you, you may not understand that. You may not understand that they have a different culture. You may not understand what they value. And the way you bridge the gap of understanding is gaining knowledge. So you reduce anxiety, you reduce insecurity by gaining knowledge. So if we just simply understood who these people were, we wouldn't be scared of them, because the consequence of being scared will result in discrimination. So this will be evident with the Executive Order 9066. Go ahead and underline that. This will be signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and in essence create internment camps. We weren't going to use concentration camps because that's something that the Nazis were using and doing. No. We had internment camps, and we placed people of Asiatic descent. We were primarily focusing on putting people of Asiatic descent on the West Coast into these camps to protect them. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is, protect them from what? Protect them from who? Oh, well, there are Americans out there that might be threatening Asians because they look at Pearl Harbor and, they see an Asian and they think, oh my God, they must be Japanese. Like, nah, dude, I'm Chinese. Oh my God, they must be Japanese. Nah, I'm Vietnamese. Oh my God, they must be Japanese. No, I'm Korean. But to Americans, that didn't matter. As far as Americans were concerned, these guys look different. They have Asian-y looks, if you will. So throw them in these camps. Otherwise, we're going to beat them up. We're going to attack them. We're going to assault them. And this is all predicated and surrounded in an ether of fear. Now, where do they get that from? I mean, Pearl Harbor didn't help, but we also reinforce these stereotypes and these fears by way of language. Japanese people were often portrayed as rats, dogs, gorillas, snakes, bestial, subhuman individuals. Propaganda would be pushed to blame Japanese aggression as if it's inherent in their racial genetic makeup. We would never make those assumptions of Germans. We would never make those assumptions of Italians, despite the fact that they too are engaging in behavior that is unbecoming, that they're engaging in behavior that is monstrous. We would never identify them as such. Why? Because there are too many people who are of German descent. There are too many people of Italian descent living in this country. Now, we can do this to people of Japanese or Asiatic descent. Why? Because they make up less than 6% of the population. So Executive Order 9066 will force people of Japanese descent to relocate to these internment camps. You can go look through the books and you'll find out that a lot of the individuals in the camp, or not a lot of them, but some of the individuals were not even Japanese. They were mistaken Chinese, they were mistaken Koreans, but nonetheless they looked Asian, so throw them in there. What we need to take away from Executive Order 9066 is that our fear can result in the discrimination, alienation of American citizens, the denial of property, person, liberty, and freedom when the masses are scared. And let's be very frank about what I mean by that. We're talking about the majority of white America just doesn't know. And that's why it's imperative that we tell these stories so that we do know. And that when people begin pushing a narrative, there can be some negative consequences, whether intended or not. The possibility of consequence exists when you operate with those type of narratives. When we refer to something as the Chinese flu, like It's when you run with that type of narrative, then you have animosity, hostility towards people of Asiatic descent. As to whether or not if that's true, that's neither here nor there. As to whether or not, well, I've never seen an Asian guy get beat up. Probably not. Who would and who would want to? We would hope to never encounter those type of racist actions or attitudes. But you got to be kidding me if you don't think they exist. So it's very important how we frame narratives, how we frame history, and that we look back and observe that even a popular president like Franklin Delano Roosevelt can make a mistake. And we made a mistake by putting American citizens in camps when they were threatening no one. It was easier to put them in camps than to put all the racist Americans in camps. And that's the truth. When we look at African Americans as the largest minority group in the United States, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, is still segregated. Red Cross refused to mix black blood with white blood. And that just goes to show how messed up our science was, our understanding of science in the mid 1940s. In the 1940s, Red Cross, a humanitarian organization, does not want to mix black blood with white blood because the idea was what? Oh my God, you got black blood in your body. You might be black now. Is that what we're thinking? Is that the logic that we're using? Is that the science that we're running with? And a lot of it is just trumped up, no pun intended, just a bunch of fears that are perpetuated based on the lack of racial facts, the lack of biological fact. That's how deep racism was in this country. So when it came to Black Americans serving, many of them served in segregated units. They were not allowed to serve alongside whites. They were confined to construction, transport, and other non-combat tasks. They were, in essence, gophers. We didn't want to give them guns. The idea of giving a sector of our society access to weapons, all the while they are treated like second-class citizens in this country, is ironic. It's not only ironic, it's hypocritical. Let us not forget, we hate Hitler because he believes in the racial superiority of Aryans towards other people. He believes in that, and he thinks that he can create a world that is ran by a superior, super Aryan race. This is what Hitler believes in. All the while, this is what America practices. We wrote the playbook. We have sectors of our society in which people are treated like second-class, inferior peoples because we set it up like that. Hitler is probably looking at the United States as a model. So I find it ironic when we look at the rhetoric of Hitler and the reality of the United States, and we don't see that parallel. We do not see that parallel. VE Day. You can go ahead and underline that. This is May 8th, 1945, will be the formal end of the war against Germany. Mussolini is dead. He was assassinated. Hitler will commit suicide, and that will ultimately bring an end to Nazi Germany. Now, in April 12th, 1945, FDR will pass away. He had been elected to 4 consecutive presidential terms, which means that the American people wanted FDR to be president for at the very least 16 years, and we're hoping he was probably going to be president for the rest of our lives, and definitely his life, as a matter, obviously, because he passes away while in office. When he passes away in office, his vice president must, take the reins, if you will. And the vice president was an individual by the name of Harry S. Truman. He is briefed on the realities of the war, how to proceed, and high-ranking Washington officials ask him, listen, Japan is still out there. We got to figure out the situation. If we try to invade Japan, the losses are going to be catastrophic. They'll be even greater than the lives lost at D-Day. But that's an option. We can always invade Japan, but the Japanese are going to fight to the bone. These guys are gritty warriors. Or we can use an atomic bomb. and settle this? The answer, or the response, I should say, by Harry Truman is going to be, what is the atomic bomb? He has no clue. As a matter of fact, most people don't have a clue. Even people in high positions of office in America are not aware of what exactly the atomic bomb is. A scientist by the name of Albert Einstein, who had fled Germany in 1939, will be welcomed to the United States. We can't wait to have him. He's a living legend when it comes to science, when it comes to theory, and his theory of relativity, which was energy, E equals mc squared, which is mass times the speed of light squared. And so the mass in question is going to be uranium, and there's a man-made version known as plutonium, and that if you can harness that energy by splitting atoms, you can create energy. And again, if you can harness that, that is now nuclear energy. If you weaponize that, you have an atomic bomb. So in America, thanks to the foundation laid by Albert Einstein, American scientists led by Robert Oppenheimer will create something known as the Manhattan Project. And you guys need to underline that. This is a top secret program in which the American scientists will develop an atomic weapon during World War II. Now, the question at hand, once Truman is aware exactly what an atomic bomb can do, he makes the decision and says, we were going to bomb Japan into submission. We hope that it works. There are two sites that we plan on bombing. The first site will be Hiroshima. The second site will be Nagasaki. We drop an atomic bomb August 6, 1945, killing 70,000 instantly. And within a year's time, another 70,000 will die. 3 days, oh, by the way, they don't surrender. 70,000 dead instantaneously. They don't surrender. Within a year's time, another 70,000 dead. They don't surrender. August 9th, 1945, 3 days later, we drop another bomb. Another 70,000 dead, killed instantaneously. We dropped leaflets we flew over Japan and dropped leaflets warning them, evacuate this city. We are going to bomb it with the weapon that the world has never seen before. And you got to imagine, well, what kind of threat is that? Would people leave? You got to understand the logistics of leaving. It may not be easy for many. And if people are threatened, imagine if they said something like, well, North Korea is going to bomb Dallas. All of Dallas on the highway? And where are they going to go? Can you imagine? I mean, just think about how messed up I-20 is or I-30 is from time to time. Imagine if that entire city is trying to evacuate because of a threat. Then after the threat, guess what? There is no bomb. They'll be upset. They'll go back. And they'll say, man, I'm tired of these fake threats and this and that. We were all scared for no reason. Then they say, hey, we're going to bomb the city again. And the idea of moving everybody out of the city again, that's costing a lot of time, costing a lot of money. And then you have some Americans that will say, no, I'm definitely not leaving because this is a hoax. And then they drop the bomb. So it's a sticky situation. You can talk about, well, we warned them. Oh, man, I get that, but oh, man, it's a tough call. War is not easy. Those decisions are not easy. Lives are going to be lost. Hideki Tojo will ultimately surrender, but he doesn't surrender because of Hiroshima and Nagasaki being bombed. The Soviet Union will launch an invasion of Manchuria, and a week after that invasion, once Japan realizes the Soviet Union is on their back, once they realize the United States is bombing them into oblivion, then they decide to surrender, and Hideki Tojo will be captured. Hideki Tojo even has the audacity to try to commit suicide, thinking that it's some type of Bushido blade. He's gonna take his life in his own hands because he's a dishonorable leader or what have you. So the dude does stab himself, but American doctors are gonna save him because we're not gonna let him kill himself. No, that killing is for us. We will remember Pearl Harbor in that capacity. What I hopefully want you guys to take away from this slide is that we got to ask yourself, man, did the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki end World War II? Did it end? Did it force the Japanese to surrender by itself? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I can't concretely say yes. I think it helped. I think the invasion of Manchuria by the Soviet Union as well painted a bleak picture for the Japanese people, Japanese leadership. But when the Japanese surrendered, World War II was officially over. At the conclusion of World War II, or nearing the conclusion of World War II, there will be two major meetings that I want us to be aware of. Please underline Bretton Woods. Please underline Potsdam. Now, at Bretton Woods, this is an economic international conference where many of the major leaders of the world are heading to, they're convening at. And it's at this meeting we make a declaration and a push that the American dollar will now be the international currency of choice, no longer the British pound. The British are taking a back seat economically, and the United States is now leading the world when it comes to finances. And if the United States is leading the world financially, that also means that our system of capitalism is the economic framework that will lead the world from here on out. So Bretton Woods is major because it establishes the United States and capitalism as an economic powerhouse. The second meeting is called Potsdam. And at Potsdam, this is where the final three, the big three, Truman of the United States, Churchill of the Soviet Union, Churchill of Great Britain, and Stalin of the Soviet Union, we will establish the terms of surrender for Nazi Germany. We decide that only the military administration, that a military administration for Germany would be established, and the top three will agree that only your top rank officials, only your top Nazi officials will be placed on trial for crimes against humanity. These will be referred to as the Nuremberg trials. This is where we get exposed to the realities of the Holocaust, the depth of the Holocaust, the severity of the Holocaust. And again, we learned from our mistakes, whereas if you recall, after World War I, we blamed all of Germany, morally responsible. This time around, we're only blaming top Nazi officials, top Nazi leaders, so that way we can try to reconcile and move forward as a country, or as countries in this global narrative. At the conclusion of World War II and the conclusion of Potsdam, a decision will also be made to create a global organization known as the United Nations. I need you guys to underline that. The United Nations will be a global agency, much like the original League of Nations. It was designed to prevent conflict. The United Nations outlaws the use of force to settle international disputes. And this time around, the United States will be involved. We will endorse the UN Charter. We will be a member of the United Nations. We are a prime player in the United Nations. The site for the UN will be located in New York City. There will be a General Assembly, which every nation will have an equal voice, but there will also be something known as a Security Council, made up of 5 permanent members and then 6 rotating members. The 5 permanent members will be a representative of the United States, Great Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and China. Those are your 5 permanent members. And then there are 6 rotating members. And I think the reason why they chose 6 was so it gave a sense of parity or equity, that these 5 would not have overwhelming power, that if those rotating 6 ever were to organize and unify themselves, they could overwhelm the existing 5. And so it presented this notion of equality. But in reality, man, when you're one of the top 5, it ain't going to be difficult to persuade one of those rotating members to be in line or on the same page. The bottom line is this: World War II is over. The United States is in charge of the United Nations, or I should say they are a member in the United Nations. They are a leader in the United Nations. And you can make an argument that the United States will emerge from World War II as an economic powerhouse, leading us into our next chapter of notes, which will be known as the Cold War. I'll see you guys then.